Welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, which is the leading global organisation defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. We are actually radical feminists here, so the RF in TERFs, and we are the targeted opponent of gender identity ideology. Our analysis of gender identity ideology has been consistent since Janice Raymond's The Transsexual Empire. We're not surprised when this new attack came along. We haven't changed our analysis for 45 years, although actually we have, because we've updated it. In 2018, Women's Declaration International wrote a declaration on women's sex-based rights, and it's been signed by 38,654 people from 160 countries and is supported by 540 organisations. So if you want to know what our political position is, read the declaration. And if you haven't yet done so, sign it. You can use it, and you can use parts of it or all of it to lobby decision makers, policy makers, politicians, or just to explain what we're worried about. And the good thing is it's nearly 7,000 words long. And so it is a clear explanation of what the threats are to women's sex-based rights. So we have volunteer activists, country contacts from every continent, and do join us. You can look on the website womensdeclaration.com or email info@womensdeclaration.com. So today, I'm so delighted. We're going to discuss Jennifer Bilek's work and her new book, or newish book, which is Transsexual, Transgender, Transhuman. And then after we've talked with Jennifer, we've got 4 videos of country reports from Argentina, Australia, Canada, and Scotland. And we also have about a 30 minutes, 32 minutes compilation of loads and loads and loads of interviews with women who were at the November the 1st demo protest against German self-ID law in London. Jennifer Bilek, prolific journalist, lots and lots of writing, but this is a book which brings lots of the most important or fantastic work that she's done. It was published in July 2024 by Spinifex Press. It's called Transsexual, Transgender, Transhuman, Dispatches from the 11th Hour. Jennifer Bilek is an investigative journalist who's tracked the funding of the gender industry for over a decade. She's the author of The 11th Hour, a platform highlighting the connections between technology, transsexualism, and transhumanism. Her research into the philanthropic backers of the gender industry has been used for legal briefs and platforms in myriad publications, films, and other media in the US and internationally. So welcome, Jennifer. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me back, Joe. It's great to be here. I'm doing great.
That's great. And how is the book going? Have you had good sales and good feedback from it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going great. I'm really
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah, well, I've got a copy of it here. I think because of my background, it might be hard to show it, but it's a fantastic book, available from Spinifex Press, and it brings together quite a lot of the articles that are in the 11th Hour blog. Can you tell us about why you wanted to bring these together into a book?
To give it a broader reach, my blog doesn't hit the mainstream public, so and Spinifex came to me. I was actually working on a different book. And Spinifex, the gals at Spinifex Press, came to me and suggested, a compilation of everything that's on the blog. And I love the idea. I had actually thought about that previously at some point, and but I just veered off. And then they came to me and they asked me, and I was like, yay, love this, because it's really, it's very short, tight pieces. I mean, I know my attention span has really been changed in terms of reading, like books. So I thought this was, this would be really, really good for people because it gets the information out in short chunks. It's also the information is pretty dense in terms of it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So to have them in short, tight pieces, I think is effective.
And there's a lot in there. I'm just going to read out some of the contents. So it starts with an introduction, and then it says, who are the rich white men institutionalizing transgender ideology? And then sort of slightly uh, answering, well, and then it says big pharma, big tech, and synthetic sex identities. I'll read a couple more and then come back to ask what some of these things mean. Capitalism, the new left, and the gender industry. And then the gay rights movement has been hijacked by a radical transhumanist agenda. Then gender ideology, technology, and sexual trauma, a perfect transhumanist storm. And there's absolutely, I mean, this is these. I won't read all of them because there are 27 chapters. But the really great thing, as you've said, Jennifer, is they're quite short and they're quite diverse into, although it is all focused on the money and but this specific type of money. So I suppose in reading and what I understand is you sort of think your chapter 8 is Martin Rothbard, the founding father of the transgender empire. Is that what your sort of you would say that he's pretty much the founding father?
Yes, as it's developed currently, the current iteration of what people call, transgenderism or transsexualism, as it's versioned into an industry. Yes, he would be the founding father of that,
Yeah. And what if
because it's really his ideology at play, his fetish, as it has escalated and melded with uh, his vast experience in the tech field, and specifically reproductive technologies, biotechnologies. Yeah. So, and he's written about this. I mean, he's written about transsexualism, transgenderism as an on ramp to transhumanism,
yeah,
um, and the future the future of human reproduction via technologies, and also virtual realities.
yeah. And from your in your understanding, what is it? I know you've said, but can you go into deeper into what you guess is driving him?
I would say the same thing that drives a lot of very wealthy men in the tech industry, which is a fear of death.
Yeah,
He's afraid of death. And when you're afraid of death and you're really, really invested in technologies, and that's how you spend all of your time, like in technology, um, you you remove yourself from life, from the biosphere, and its importance in
yeah.
life. Yeah.
And I mean, so the fear of death, so he wants to transcend death, I guess, is that with the transhumanism. Do you think it's that he wants to like get body parts, like get a new body, get inhabit a new body, or is he wanting to reproduce more of himself that's like through some of these new technologies or something else?
Well, I think he has a fetish,
Yeah,
and he's been working that fetish for a very long time. His sexual proclivities entail owning womanhood
yeah,
for himself. He has appropriated synthetic simulacrums of women's biology, and he runs around and calls himself a transhumanist transsexual. I don't think he's interested in just moving body parts around, though that's part of it, but he really wants to own womanhood. He wants to own um, the ability to create life.
yeah,
And he believes that we're doing that through technology. And on the way to that, um, you have to subordinate women, and you have to uh, somehow usurp their ability to gestate life.
yeah.
So, and this is happening with current reproductive technologies.
Yeah, so he wants to usurp it in terms of get further on so that they won't need women. Is that? part of
Yes,
the thing.
I mean the whole transition from transsexual to transhuman is a technological one. I mean, transvestic fetishism used to, the men that engaged in this were perfectly comfortable just using costume and miming our mannerisms to work out their sexual kink, right? But as technologies developed to adopt synthetic simulacrums of our biology, then the technology moved, right? So they escalated. And then the internet came upon us, and these men had access to each other, and they formed strong coalitions, and they wanted to have recognition for and legal structure for their particular fetish. But if you're if this is your thing, and then you have access to power, and you're like sort of a tech guru, and he's also a lawyer, he's sort of moved this along with the escalation of his fetish to owning womanhood again through reproductive technologies. So, and this, now we move into the transhumanist phase. I mean, if you look at surrogacy, for instance, this is already a transhumanist reproductive technology. You now have three biological parents in some cases for a baby. You have a man's sperm, a woman's eggs, and another woman gestates this child. And they are all biological parents of this child. So now you have three biological parents of a human baby. So that's already a transhumanist reproductive technology.
Yeah.
And they're researching developments in putting wombs into men. They're compartmentalizing our biology. They're teaching children, for instance, that they're not whole biological systems attached to the natural world, but they are compartmentalized commodities. They are now penises, breasts, vaginas, genes, hormones, sperm, ovary, etc., etc. Right? This is what they're learning in their schools. This is the transhumanist deconstruction of human reproduction.
Are you finding that they're also making a huge amount of money from it? So it's like a new sort of positive feedback loop that they create this new
Oh, of
system,
course,
and then
of
they
course.
it goes further
Yeah,
and further.
of course, of course. I mean, it's not like, I mean, in some cases, these are men sitting around deciding what's the next step, right?
Yeah.
Like the ones that, like Rothblatt and uh, Christine Burns and Stephen Whittle, who's a woman, sitting around talking about legal structure for dissociation from sex reality. They created this legal structure. They call them gender bills now.
What's a
Um,
gender build?
so
Oh, gender bill, like a piece of
bills, yes,
legislation. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So, so there are some men sitting around deciding what's going on, but the rest of it is really just, you put this into the market now, and it becomes very profitable. So it just takes off of its own accord, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes competing ads, competing marketing. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon for this transgender person, right? Which is a total fiction. It's a total illusion. It's a corporate, ad for body dissociation,
Yeah.
grooming us all, towards acceptance of these of our entire selves being reduced to, reproductive commodities.
Why don't they just do the fetish at home? Why, or in little groups? What is it about this global domination, and then the silencing of women? Why do they need to do that, do you think?
These men want validation of themselves as women. They want to be the creators of life.
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity now with advancements in technology to do that. It's power. How do you
Yeah.
explain, power over the world and this drive? It's a sort of emptiness, like it's an emptiness. I mean, the natural world really fulfills us. It's what it's there. It's there. It supports us, and we support it. We're integrally connected with it, and this sustains us, and it's a beautiful thing, right? But if you remove yourself from that process, then you don't get the reward of being part of this system, right? So you have to continually fulfill yourself. You're like an addict, you know, so you keep going further and further and further. You want control, you have to control, you know, and they
Yeah.
want to control nature, you know, and women are always the stand-in for nature, you know, because they gestate the species. So women must be subordinated just like the natural world.
What do you think the end goal in like one of the ways this could play out? What would women's role be in their ideal scenario? If they get exactly what they want, what are they gonna have us?
Ross Black's transhumanist cult, transsexual transhumanist cult, is really geared towards a singularity, you know, where we're not even living in part of the biological world, but we are in a singularity and we are in cyberspace. We live there. So that's his ultimate goal.
Yeah.
You know, we are data, we are mindware. And, you know, most of the technologies out there move in this direction, you know, so, you know, he sounds like a nut, like an absolute, you know, he's nutty like a psychopath is nutty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the
And in
fact,
control of lots.
you know, he has the ear of many, many powerful people, you know, and they listen to him because he has had such substantial successes in the technology field, the pharmacy field, the biotechnology field. You know, people listen to him and they think, oh, they listen to this. Oh, let's just break the binary between the sexes. This is so good. This will, you know, obliterate sexism.
Have you written about the funding of political parties and big parts of the media? Like we in Britain, I've heard that the Guardian got some funding from Big Pharma and the Lib Dems got Liberal Democrat Party got some funding. Do you have you got some blogs on that influencing parties and the media?
I do. Basically, the media is controlled by big pharma and big tech here in America. I mean, it's just what it is, you know. And the pharma industry is, you know, or the medical industry in total, I would say, is, you know, on par in terms of revenue with the war machine, you know, with the military. So it's a substantial beast.
And oil, I
and,
guess, is a big one as well.
and oil,
uh,
yes.
Maybe the what is it, like the three
The
knights of the
trifecta.
apocalypse or whatever. There was a question, would you please ask Jennifer about the difficulty of accessing mainstream media? Um, it's dangerous not to hear her research more widely.
I don't think there's been a left platform that has published my work. And even the publications on the right, they only go so far in what they're willing to put out. I would say that's not particularly true for some independent platforms, but certainly the mainstream media. You know, they critique transgenderism, but they don't critique the concept of a transgender person, right?
Yeah,
Which doesn't
which you,
exist. It's a corporate fiction. But they all
yeah,
keep, you know, they all keep talking about it as if it's a settled premise. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
even the right who critiques this only goes so far.
What's your feeling about how to get your message? I mean, your incredibly important research out. What do you do to try to do that?
Well, you know, different people have gone in different directions. Right now, I'm doing a lot of podcasts that are sort of alternative media, because I think alternative media is our best bet at this point.
Yeah,
So I'm doing smaller podcasts and also trying to just keep people in on that level because information travels. I mean, Twitter, for all its downsides, is really a great platform in terms of my having gotten messages around because even though I'm shadow banned on there, other people see my work and they take it forward, people that aren't shadow banned, you know. So my work has been able to get all around the world because of that, you know, which is pretty extraordinary. So I just do the work and I put it out there for as much as I can, and I let other people take care of the rest. Work too hard to, let me try and, get on this platform. You know what I mean?
Elon Musk sort of doesn't, well, he doesn't believe that you can change sex. And he is a tech transhumanist as far as I can see, and he wants to make the possibility that men like him can go and live in outer space, or that wants to transcend life in a way. And is but he doesn't seem to be going along this line with the medicalization and the transgender ideology. So why in what makes him different from Martin Rotblat?
Well, we have to realize, and I probably haven't made this clear enough, that transhumanism is a pretty big field. There's a lot of different transhumanists, and a lot of people come at that in different ways. Some people think about it and think about the ethics around that, and they don't take it to this absolute zenith of human sexual objectification, like Rothblatt has done. I mean, he has a particular cult that is transsexual transhumanism. Yeah, where he is targeting human reproduction, to be usurped by the tech sector and eventually obliterated. His goal on the way to that, on the way to cyberspace, is melding us with technology completely, like cyborgification. Yeah. And gender rights are really the legal framework, the gestational phase of AI rights, because these robots and these people that are already have been augmented are going to need special rights to live in the world amongst us. Because say like a robot isn't really sex, they're assigned a sex, right? And they're going to be working and moving in the world, right? So if it's built like a female robot, or let's say it's built like a male robot, right? Because it works on a farm. And if the robots are made to look like us, we become more attached to them, right? And we see them as us, as a part of us, right? As another citizen, kind of, right? So now will this man robot, looks like a man, will this male robot be able to go into the female bathroom? Will it think like a man thinks, since it's been programmed by men? Or will it have its own thinking circuity?
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
this is where all these things are going. And the gender industry really grooms us, because you can't just lay this out on the public the way that we see ourselves now. You have to groom the public to accept these things. So if you can groom people to think of themselves in parts, their whole system, their whole anatomical system, in parts and as commodities, then you're halfway there. Yeah. And
yeah,
especially children, who they're just wildly, blatantly, brazenly indoctrinating in schools and all throughout society. Wherever they are, this message is there. You can
yeah.
create yourself with technology.
And it's interesting because I talk to quite a lot of young women, girls, and they almost all believe in a woman's right to choose. They believe we should have the right to abortion, and they also think we should have the right to surrogacy, the right to have surrogate kids. And they're very adamant. They're just as vehement that it is a right to have surrogacy as, and I sort of think, whoa, that happened very effectively, didn't it? Sort of under the radar, that young women now all accept, pretty much as far as I can see, they pretty much all accept surrogacy and think it's a human right for them to, and everybody should be having that. And that's absolutely the media are really normalizing. So you're sort of thinking the next step is going to be AI rights and robot rights
Oh,
under as
sure. Oh,
part of human
absolutely.
rights.
They
It's just
already
going to,
have rights in Chile for augmented humans.
yes,
I mean, because people are being genetically manipulated already, and so these things are just going to continue to escalate and develop. Yeah.
yeah,
And you asked me about Musk and his positioning in all of this. I think that he perceives himself as a good transhumanist. He's not all about this crazy deconstruct sex stuff, right? He's coming at it. He's a pretty creative individual. I think he's really coming at it from a position of, he just wants to, do whatever we can, to advance technologies, because that's his field, right? And if you can, why shouldn't you?
yeah,
Right? And he's tweeted before that he thinks it would be great. He thinks it will be great when we can all choose whether or not we want to be cyborgs. Whereas Martin Rothblatt, he just wants to leap on over all of that.
One of the things Mary Daly said is that there's this sort of very, very deep lack of meaning that she sort of argues a lot of men have, and that there's a massive hatred of women and our creativity and our link to nature, um, and that sort of drives. I mean, it's similar to what you've said, but sort of laid out a bit differently. But how many of these people also are driven by a hatred? Oh, I know, I'm asking psychology again, of women, like just hating us, or being envious of us, of women naturally giving birth. Or do you think it's not that's not the biggest push?
Environmental philosopher Derek
Mm,
Jensen said that if you, or he might have even been quoting somebody else, but he said if you hate something long enough, it can feel like love, you know. And I think that these men are, again, when you remove yourself from the natural world, and the natural world is really just procreation and death. It's a regenerative cycle, right? But if you remove yourself from that, you're going to fear death, basically. That removal process, because being part of that process, you understand that process, life and death, and you're not so terrified of it. But the further away you get from it, the more you want to control this thing because you're afraid to die, right? Um, and so I think that's really the impetus behind all of this, probably at its core. And hating women is just business. It's business. They're in the way.
yeah,
It's downstream of business. Yeah.
yeah.
And all slavery really works like that. You have to, you know, deconstruct the humanity of somebody that you want to enslave. You have to do that. Otherwise, other people aren't going to let you do that, right?
I mean, I think one of the things I've thought is rather, it's good to follow the money, but also follow the middle-aged women to total obscurity. That I think one of the reasons, I mean, they want to get rid of us middle-aged women because we're old enough to have lived and experienced the horrors, and we are different. We are a barrier to th this. And how come, I mean, have you been massively attacked by the powers that you're exposing?
Basically just censorship. I mean, I'm shadow banned on Twitter. I'm shadow banned everywhere. I was deplatformed from myriad platforms, the left forum in New York City being a very significant one early on. And like, I think it was 2000, I don't know, 2014, 15, maybe it was 16. I can't remember now. But, I had a whole, I had just collated my research and wanted to put it out to the public to see if I was moving in the right direction, you know, um, about the money and power behind this thing. And so I uh, applied for a platform at the Left Forum, which is a platform in New York City that runs for 3 days, and it discusses, people talk about everything on the left side of politics. So I really can. I had been in there before and done some conferences on the environment, and so I figured it was kind of a shoe in, But I really picked the wrong title because, I mean, I explicitly said what I wanted to talk about, and they accepted it actually. But then they got inundated with calls from PRAs, and they shut it down.
Were you surprised?
Uh, I was kind of surprised because I had gotten in, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then they shut it down. So I was really pissed off. But I also knew very clearly, oh, okay, so I'm on the right path, you
Yeah,
know.
wow. And I know this is a tiny bit off topic, but how come you're so happy? You're laughing so much, and like in all the interviews I've been watching, ready for this, so you're really having a good time most of the time. How does that happen?
I love exposing these people. I love it. I love it.
Oh,
People think
wow.
I'm very altruistic. I'm doing this for humanity. I really love this.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, what
brilliant.
else are we going to do,
Yeah.
but fight for our humanity? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it's like, I mean, I wake up with like a massive anxiety sometimes. But I flip it around. The way to flip it around, I mean, as an artist, I know this is to send it back out, to transform that anxiety into something else and move. When you're in hell, keep moving. It's like my favorite motto.
Yeah.
You have to keep moving. You have to do things to ameliorate the stress and the absolute horror show that this is.
I mean, that's so fundamental. It's like a different way of being happy. Well, definitely not take antidepressants. Like, do brave activism against the forces of evil. Is just, I mean, if everyone watching this, look how happy Jennifer is. We should all be doing. We could get that happy too by doing
Well, I
this.
mean, a lot of people, I mean, women, like, they meet up and they have these conferences and they do these actions and they're happy to be together and they're happy to fight. That's what that is.
Yeah.
It's like you ameliorate, the horror of this by reclaiming your humanity.
Right. Michael O'Flaherty is a big wig in a lawyer, ex-Catholic priest, probably was the person who wrote the Yogyakarta Principles in Europe, and he's very significantly changing a lot of law. Does he come up in your research?
Who is he?
He's called Michael O'Flaherty. He's an Irish human rights lawyer. Now I think he might be the top human rights in terms of the human rights uh, in Europe.
I think he was part of my unwinding of the Arcus Foundation and John Stryker, which
Yeah,
is the major LGBT NGO in the United States, which is driving gender ideology globally. He's
yeah.
heir to John Stryker's heir to a $133 billion medical corporation, Stryker Medical, which is in like 70 different countries. Um, and he has built a political apparatus to drive this ideology through other LGBT organizations, and the culture. All these cultural institutions, the churches, the military, the everything. I mean, everything that you can think of culturally. He's got money,
Yeah.
being sent there to drive the ideology. And he
I mean,
specifically said, if you don't accept this ideology, we're moving forward. If you don't accept this ideology, you don't get your funding.
yeah,
Yeah, and he uses his stock from his fortune. He's heir to this medical corporation. He uses his stock to support Arcus Foundation. That's how everything is funded, and he creates the political infrastructure for that. And O'Flaherty is it O'Flaherty or O'Flaherty or whatever the hell his name
yeah.
is. Yeah, he's part of that whole thing.
You mentioned at some stage you think it's a castration fetish. I mean, and linked to that question, everybody should read this book. Jennifer is a brilliant writer. It's a joy reading.
Oh, thanks.
You know your turn of phrase, and it's fun and it's quite light. Like as we're seeing in this interview, you don't it's not sort of grim reading it. It's quite, but it's very very well written. There's a lot of really clear phrases, and you're quite inventive as well. You don't hold back when you're thinking it's something, which it makes it very new. And you're always coming up with new ideas. But this, I didn't. So the castration fetish sort of doesn't. It's sort of part of it. But what can you explain that?
Well, again, this ideology is cult ideology crafted by Martine Rothblatt. And it's absolutely a castration cult. I mean, children are being castrated, literally. And this is towards a transcendence. He believes that if we deconstruct the binary, the sex binary, not just metaphysically or not just linguistically, legally, socially, but literally, if we deconstruct this binary, then we will be liberated. We will transcend our humanity. So this is this is how it is, a religious castration cult. His cult is called Terrorism, by the way. He actually has a religion called Terrorism that advocates for this.
So what is their explanation of why this is supposed to be so great?
Well, women will be liberated from giving birth. It's a big responsibility, right? They're going to be liberated from giving birth because machines will do it for them,
Yeah.
right? We're already on that track, right? And for children, it's more of an indoctrination for that process, for the technological usurpation of human reproduction, to think of themselves as commodities. And they haven't a clue, of course, that they're being corporatized, that they're just being, completely indoctrinated with marketing, like that is so penetrating. that it's, escalated into a cult. And if we keep going, we're going to have a virtual reality. It won't be long now. It's like right on the cusp now. So living in a virtual reality. People are talking about transgender people all over the world.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-bendingly, stupid. There are no people that have transcended their sex reality or their humanity thus far. They're talking about biological men, cis women. What are you positioning these things against? Like that construct is not real.
Mm.
It's not real, and people have to start calling that out.
Yeah.
What's a woman? No. What's a transgender person? How about being interviewed and asking that question? What is a transgender person? And why
Yeah.
are rights being built for people? Human rights are being built for people that want to disavow their humanity, their sex humanity. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Why not ask an interviewer that when they're interviewing you, instead of just going along with the premise and asking and answering the question? No.
Yeah. And I think that that language is really useful. I mean, it's very worrying that lots of the not even gender critical, gender slightly concerned sort of layer of this gender concerned, they're creating a space for themselves, aren't they? That where they can be the voice of reason. Like, we don't want to upset any transgender kids,
Exactly.
they'll say, and they are going to get funding. I think that probably, but they're going to be, unfortunately speaking for us, in many
Yes,
situations. And so
they
we just
already
have to
are.
keep going on, don't we? Yeah.
Yes.
And then it looks as if there's a debate between two sides, whereas actually we're out of it. Could Jennifer say more about three biological parents in surrogacy? I think I understand, but maybe not. How is that three biological parents?
Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes, uh, it's the woman's eggs who's giving birth to the child, gestating the child. But that's not always the case. Um, Sometimes it's a woman's eggs, a man's sperm, and those are implanted into a third person, a woman, to gestate a child. Now, this child is growing in her body. It belongs to her. It is part of her organs, right? She is a parent of this baby. The woman who has offered her eggs in this transaction, and it is a consumerist transaction, is also the parent of this baby. And the father, who's donated his sperm, is also the father of this child. When I first started, researching this, people weren't nearly up to speed like they are now, but they're really getting up to speed. And people are also getting very sick of what's going on. They feel the tyranny behind this and they don't understand why it's so tyrannical. And there's so much information out there, and this doesn't really appear to the mainstream because of the censorship. And Kara Dansky, everybody knows Kara Dansky. She's always saying that if we can be heard, we'll win. And that's really true. We
Yeah.
are so censored in the mainstream media, and really, a lot of the alternative media is men, and they see this as such a big deal because it's radical feminists that are out front and center, you know, clamoring about this. They think it's just women.
Like, I was watching a thing of two, Winston Marshall and another, that Christian guy, Calvin something. And Calvin said, "Oh yeah, that's an argument of the radical feminists." And Marshall went, "Shh, don't mention them."
It's presented and framed as a women's issue. So now it's a women's issue against trans rights.
Mm,
But there are no trans rights because there are no transgender people.
yeah.
There are only people that think or want to be outside the borders of our human species.
I don't understand what you mean about by transgender people not existing. I mean, there are people who take hormones and have surgery and live as the opposite sex, dot, dot. So that's exactly. So what do you
What does
mean by
living as the
that?
opposite sex mean? How do you do that? How do you live as the opposite sex? It's not about these people that are doing this to, create this theater, this performance of there being a person outside the borders of our sex species. It's about us. It's about changing us, changing our perceptions about our species sex. That's what all of this, infrastructure is about, and all these, this inundation with propaganda.
Yeah.
It's about changing us and our perceptions of ourselves so that we adopt and accept these new technologies. And transgenderism is the system changing us in terms of reproduction. There are other avenues of transhumanism, but this is the reproductive realm.
What is your suggestion for a tactic to get this ideology out of K-12 schools?
If you want to mobilize people, you have to tell them the truth. You have to stop drowning in, discussions of gender and gender dysphoria and gender expression and gender. It's not serving us. Bin the word. Talk about what it really is. If it takes a few more syllables, if it takes a few more words, explain to people what this is. Don't be afraid. I do it all the time. I mean, in my lay life, not just on podcasts and in my writing, but everywhere I go, I talk to people about this. They're like, well, what is this? Why is it like this? And I talk to them. It's advancing, human technologies in reproduction, reproduction. And it gets people to think about themselves and as commodities, as parts. It's easy. I mean, I live in a capitalist country, for God's sake. People understand commodities and breaking things apart so that they're more valuable, as commodities. It's simple. It just registers. They get it. When you start talking about identity and, some people feel this, and they just get it's like mishmash. You know what I mean? It's like a soup, and that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to confuse people and obscure what's actually transpiring here. This is very profitable.
Yeah.
It's very profitable from one end to the other. You're ruining people's health. You're going to have to fix them later on or now. You're dealing with people's fetishes. They're consumed with the idea of passing as the opposite sex. It doesn't just take, rearranging your reproductive organs. I mean, they get their clavicle shaved, they get their feet shaved, they get their legs shortened, their arms shortened, their brow, reconfigured, their jawline, they're this, they're that, and they're just, and then puberty blockers and hormones, cross-sex hormones. And you have research on these very special people that need these very special human rights, and it just goes on and on and on, and the reproductive market, the tech reproductive market. You're sterilizing all these children. Who's going to give them children?
So this video that we're just about to watch is from yesterday's demo in London. So why are you here at the German embassy protest November the 1st?
Well, it's a new law's just come in Germany, and I'm half German, and I can't bear the fact that women and girls and boys are not going to be safe because men can self-identify into women's safe spaces.
Yeah, and so what's the threat? Why does that matter?
Well, it's just open to anyone. So anyone who wants to break safeguarding boundaries and get access to vulnerable women and girls, and this will mean children as well, just declares themselves female. It's an abuser's charter.
Yeah, that's terrible. What does your slogan, Raus mit den Männern?
So this is a German song, and I've rather overthought it this morning. It's a song by Ute Lemper, and it means get the men out of the women's house.
Oh, right.
It's a reference to a song she sings. It wasn't written by her.
And what's your outfit?
So I've got my suffragette colours on today. Got my suffragette hat, slightly Edwardian, and I've got my suffragette sash on as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, vielen Dank.
Yeah, tschüss.
So, who are you and
Hiya.
why are you here at this demo?
I'm DJ Lippy, I'm an activist.
Oh, you're famous.
Twitter famous is not really famous, about 1,000 people famous.
What's your Twitter?
Turfosaurus. I'm an activist, and it comes from a protest that was held to protest Labour's embrace of policies like self-ID, which have a harmful impact on women. Basically, we've been told we're like dinosaurs hoarding rights, and this is the new way of the future, that people should just be able to self-identify whatever gender they feel like.
Yeah. And what's wrong with that?
Well, it's got a load of knock-on effects on women, single-sex spaces, gay rights. Essentially, you've replaced something that's an objective fact about reality with a subjective notion. There's not actually a definition of gender in any of these acts, as far as I'm aware. It's just a bundle of sex-based stereotypes that people are trying to identify into. So there's no protections for nefarious actors and bad faith actors who want to game the system or exploit the system, exploit the loopholes. And it puts women in a very vulnerable position, women in domestic violence shelters, in women's prisons, changing rooms. These kind of spaces are that were built for women so that we can have equal access to the public realm, because there was just men's spaces and women were very, very vulnerable to sexual assault in those spaces. So we've built them over many, many years. And it seems funny that although the states introducing these laws will pay lip service to things like domestic abuse and women's rights, in reality what they're doing is dismantling women's rights, dismantling women's safeguards, and it's happening all over Europe. This is like a top-down movement. I think Germany's the biggest country to embrace self-ID. We've had Spain follow suit. It started off with small countries, Ireland, Malta, and now it's moving on to the bigger states, and Germany's one of the biggest economies in Europe, and
So we're really worried about it.
Yeah, it's very concerning, and it just builds a consensus that it's perfectly fine, but like in many places around the world, when it's introduced, they don't check up. There's no way to follow through and see, is this negatively impacting on women? They don't keep records, so we don't really know what's happening. And if men are going to be taking advantage to basically get at women where women are vulnerable. So it's very, very worrying. And again, Germany's a country with not the best track record on women's rights. I know after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a lot of East German women lost a lot of their sex-based rights. So there's already a country that doesn't have the greatest protections for women. Yeah. And this is just knocking the stool out from under us, as you will, you know.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vielen Dank. What's the protest and why are you here?
It's about, in Germany, they've just enacted a law that allows men to self-ID as women. The law also allows people to choose the gender of their baby when they're born, and this is just madness. It's just madness.
On their birth certificate. So they can just say.
They can just say. I think my son, my biological son, to me feels like a girl. So the child has no rights in this, has no say in this at all. But the difficult thing for us is that Germany is so powerful within the world that self-ID coming into effect in Germany is possibly a knock-on effect everywhere else. Yeah. So that, for me, in my country, England, Great Britain, is a massive thing. So I'm here for my daughter, my stepdaughter, for all my friends and all their daughters, many of whom agree that this is madness, but just don't think it's going to be an effect. It's not going to matter to them. It's not going to affect anybody. But I feel this is critical. It's a dismantling of society as we know it and trying to restructure it in a way that nobody has agreed to. Brilliant. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much for being here. Why are you here at this demonstration against German self-ID?
Because I feel quite deeply about this issue, and I feel that this law and self-ID in general is absolutely the wrong way to go about supporting people who think they can't be happy in the body they're born with. And there are many, many reasons why I think this is the wrong way to go about this, but I think a couple of them are, I think it particularly affects vulnerable young people, and in particular vulnerable young girls actually, who are set on a pathway promising them happiness when actually they often end up with irreversible medical interventions, which is tragic. And we see an increasing number of detransitioners now and people who really regret what's happening. And again, I think it affects young women more than young men. I think there are a lot of other fights we still have to do to get to equality between the sexes and accepting homosexuality around the world. So many countries where homosexuality is still capital punishment. So many countries where women can't speak, show their face.
Afghanistan.
I think those are the struggles we have to concentrate on, and not on this allegedly progressive movement pushing the boundaries to a sort of like non-binary world. Yeah. Which sort of like brings me on to another point, which is it's just deeply unscientific. There are two sexes. yes, there are some intersex conditions, but these people actually need very specific help. They are not served by the current trans ideology. So it's deeply scientific. We've got gravity, the earth is round, we do accept that. How people can't accept that there are two sexes, it's beyond me. And I think it leads to, I wouldn't have a problem if we still recorded your biological sex and then what you feel like.
Yes,
yeah? But yes, you could do that if you feel but it shouldn't be the basis of law. Yeah, what you feel like.
So it could be possibly like a religion. You could be
exactly.
a female
exactly. A self-declared whatever.
And it would be just
but it can't be the basis of law. It can't be the basis of law. I mean, we're going to see so many cases now, ridiculous cases, where men declare to be women to claim their pension earlier and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, the most... And as the other thing, actually, probably my last point, because I could go on forever, is that, we shouldn't be surprised that the far right is rising. Yeah, because actually a lot of people in Germany look at what the Greens and the SDP have been doing with this law and think, are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And then they flock, and in the States as well. And they flock to, sort of like more right positions because I think
which we do. I mean, we at WDI we really disagree with the right positions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I find myself now agreeing with Kemi Badenoch.
Yes.
I'm suddenly
at least on this.
On this.
On
at least on this.
Yeah.
And I'm politically homeless, really.
Yes.
And so I think it's a big tragedy. I particularly feel for vulnerable young women. Who it's rubbish that it's reversible and stuff, and you could just try once your puberty is blocked. And also for young girls who are trying to, get into sports.
Yes.
You just don't know whether, you're going to have a boy in the competition, and your the odds are suddenly stacked very differently against you.
Okay.
So I think it's a very sad day for Germany, not just because of this law, but also the wider impact and actually driving some people towards the AfD.
Yeah, it's terrible. Okay, well, thank you very much. Vielen Dank.
Dankeschön.
Hello.
Hello.
This is very appropriate for just after Halloween. Your hair.
It is all year round for me. I'm here because self-ID is the death of women's rights. It renders women nothing but a concept in a man's head, a philosophical idea, a legal fiction. It destroys all of the protections that we had that were based on our sex, and it destroys children's rights as well. As now in Germany, you can, if you give birth to a daughter but you always wanted a son, you'll just write son on, you've got a boy on the birth certificate, and now you've got a boy. Magic. Right, this is literally where we're at. It sounds ridiculous, but that is what the law is. And if you call a man who doesn't think he's a man, you can be fined, I think it is €10,000.
I heard it might be even more than that, like 100,000.
It may be, I can't remember the exact number of zeros, but yeah, it's ridiculous. You shouldn't be fined €1 for it, because calling a man is just speaking the truth, and that should never be illegal. That should never be a finable offence. I don't care what his feelings are. His feelings. Being kind to these men who are not being kind to us. They are destroying our rights.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello. Can you tell people who don't know who you are and what your channel is and why you're here?
Okay.
She's Maria.
My name's Maria McLachlan. I have a YouTube channel called Peak Trans, which challenges gender identity ideology, which is the ideology that has captured Germany and many other countries. Actually, of course, we're here today to protest on behalf of our German sisters, because the consequences of gender ideology have been devastating for so many women girls in particular, but also children of both sexes who are led to believe that they can be what they're not and that it's going to make them happy and it's going to make life better for them, but it doesn't.
It won't. And your YouTube channel I often watch, and thank you so much for doing it. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's very amusing. So definitely watch it. It's very informative, but also very amusing. Do you post every week or?
Oh, I do my best, you know. Sometimes I'll do one a week, then I might go for a few weeks without doing one, but my intention is to continue until my dying breath.
We're going to win this. Thank you so much, and I think loads of people. So it's Peak Trans.
Peak Trans.
Absolutely
also the website at peaktrans.org. I collect all the latest news, links to all the news articles, the blogs posts, so check it out.
Definitely worth watching, and we'll put links to that in the chat. Thank you so much, Maria. Francis, hello, welcome to England.
Hello, good to be here.
Why have you come to this protest?
Because I care very, very deeply about women and girls, and I know that this kind of law has been coming in through Europe. In Spain, it has already come in. Men are taking advantage of it all the time. We are not safe where men can enter places for women. We're not safe, and girls particularly are not safe. I mean, I don't give a shit anymore, and I will shout about this.
Yeah.
I mean, we older women have to protest, because if you have a job, you're likely to be sacked for expressing such views. And I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm really angry. So any opportunity to protest, I will come.
Thank you so much.
Same
Thank you.
for me. Same for her.
I'm from WDI, Women's Declaration International. Why are you here on this demo, or do you know why your dog's here?
He's here because he doesn't like Rottweilers and Doberman Pinschers, identifying as miniature pinschers, because he finds
Is he
it.
a miniature pincher?
He's a miniature pinscher himself.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Can I stroke him?
Yeah, he's fine. Yeah.
He looks a bit cold. That's
just what they do. No, that's just what they do when they stay still. Yeah. So.
And what's wrong? Why can't he just be kind to Dobermans and Rottweilers?
Well, he's had bad experiences with Dobermans and Rottweilers, and he's particularly wary of them, understandably, as is his instinct. And he doesn't want to play with Rottweilers in the park. He wants to play with dogs, other miniature pinschers.
Yeah. And it's dangerous for him, I guess.
Yeah, it's dangerous for him. It confuses his sense of reality. He's constantly gaslighted into people telling him that he is actually, that he might himself be a Doberman.
Great. So can you tell the WDI FQT viewers who you are and why you're here?
Oh, I'm Helen Saxby. I'm a feminist, and I'm here in support of our German sisters who are just about to be legislated out of existence.
It's horrific. So what's the worst thing about it from your point of view?
I think probably the worst thing is the way that children can be now transed with or without their parents' consent. Certainly at the age of 14 they don't need parental consent, and even from earlier ages they can be basically their sex can be changed. And as we know, nobody can change sex, and to do that to a child, I think that's child abuse.
Yeah, that's so terrible. It's great to be here. How many people do you think are at this demonstration?
Oh, that's a difficult one. There's a few hundred, aren't there?
Yeah. It seems like, I mean, in a way it might be the biggest demonstration we've had outside an embassy. We had the New Zealand embassy.
Yes, I think so. And I don't know if you just heard that, but there were some cars beeping on the way past. So many taxi drivers, ordinary people, lorry drivers, people beeping in support of us. So I think it's a really good sign. People who are just ordinary, going about their business, and they're beeping in support.
Okay, brilliant.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you.
So Stephanie, you're from Transgender Trends.
Yes.
One of the very first organisations to stand up and say what was going on and done amazing work in schools. Why are you at this demo?
It's a really dangerous law, and it's really frightening, not just for in support of German women and children,
but also what happens in Germany. They're going completely against what's happening elsewhere, and this is a really dangerous law. It's a dangerous law for women, and it's a dangerous law for children.
Are they going more? Is it more extreme than any other law in Europe?
I'm not sure, because I think there have been other self-ID laws passed, but this seems to be, I think, more comprehensive than any other law, and particularly in regards to children. That parents can essentially choose their child's sex. That's impossible.
Yes.
A child can't choose their sex. It's not, it's not right to tell them that they can.
Yes.
This is really, at age 14, they can decide. Children can decide for themselves which sex they are. That is really crazy. And to say that any teenager is able to make decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives. We don't allow that in any other area.
It's completely mad. Are you happy, Stephanie, that there are so many women and men now involved in the struggle? Because at the beginning it was probably only you and Sheila Jeffries.
Yes.
Is it heartening to you?
It's absolutely brilliant. There are groups now for, everything. There are professionals, there are teachers, there are clinicians, there are parent groups, there are lesbian and gay and bi groups, there are groups looking at the law, fairness in sport. Every because this is such a huge issue. It affects free speech. It affects every area of everybody's lives, actually, but of course mostly women and the most vulnerable children. There are groups for autistic children. When I started Transgender Trend, I had a useful links page which I set up when I think Women's Place UK started and Fair Play for Women. And now that page is in lots of different sections. It's huge. There are so many links to so many groups, and I've got an international section for all the groups springing up all over the world. And I think it's sort of one person speaks up. I've always felt this. It's like a snowball effect. It's permission giving for everybody else. One person sets up an organisation. It's permission giving for other people to do the same.
Yeah.
And every time anybody speaks up in whatever capacity, whether it's quite personal, sort of hidden, not in public, but speaks to a friend or just asks a question or makes a comment. I think everybody can do that now. I think in the UK, because of the caste review, that's a real a permission-given thing for anybody who it backs everybody who's had concerns about this. So I think it's time for everybody to be a bit braver in whatever capacity they have to speak out. And that we will reach that critical mass where laws like this cannot be passed anymore.
And also in Britain and I think in the States, United States of America, people can speak out, but in Germany they're instituting the fines for misgendering, which are terribly worrying. So in countries like Britain where we can speak, we really need to, don't we?
Absolutely. I think where you can, you do, and it does make a difference. And I think the UK does have an influence, and so I think we have a responsibility that we can. At the moment, our speech is fairly protected. We can speak out, and we should do so. But it's quite unbelievable that this ideology, this belief, this faith is being imposed in Germany, and with fines if you don't go along with it and use the language and pretend to agree with the belief.
Yeah.
That's totalitarian, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. Well, look, thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you for all of your work on behalf of, we have lots of WDI viewers.
Well,
I'll speak for everybody, speaking for everyone. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
There's loads of us now, and I'm grateful to every single woman who is taking action on this.
So, why are you here, and what do you think of it?
Well, I'm here because I'm really upset for women in Germany who are going to have to contend with men claiming to be women, destroying women's rights, and all that goes with it, which involves the medicalisation of children. And it's all a lie. None of it is true. There is no such thing as gender dysphoria. There are autogynephilic men. And that women should lose their rights for male fetish is atrocious. So I'm here to offer my solidarity for women in Germany. I don't think we can stop this law going through now, but it will have to be reversed at some point in the future, as with all of these horrendous laws.
Fantastic. And how about you, Ray?
What she said.
But actually why I'm here is because I've travelled quite a long way, is because I wouldn't want to miss this, because this is part of an international global wave of solidarity with the women in Germany that have worked their socks off to organise this, and I'm really impressed, and I hope this is just one of many more waves that are going to roll around the globe. So rock on, sisters.
How much fun is it coming to this sort of thing?
It's great fun.
Out of 10?
Oh, out of 10.
10 out of 10?
Well, I'm a rather sad soul. This is my social life.
So it's highly recommended. Anyone who, next time, everybody come to one of these. 10 out of 10,
10 out of 10,
yeah, me too. Okay.
To hand these out as well.
Yes, okay, cool, brilliant.
You done?
What are you doing here?
Well, I came down because I came to.
Did you lead the singing?
Well, no,
you did the
I
singing.
wrote a new song.
Oh my God!
Somebody said, "Can somebody rewrite the Internationale?"
Oh!
So I did. So shall I do it for you?
Yes, please.
Right.
Hello, Joe. Hello there. Hi.
Arise now, women, from your slumbers. Are you still listening to men? For reason in revolt now thunders, and our rage is turned on them. Do away with all your trepidation. Serve our women, arise, arise. Refuse their legal protestations and reject their gender lies. So women, come rally, and this new fight let us face. The Internationale unites the female race. So women, come rally, we will conquer if we fight. The Internationale unites for women's rights.
Wow! You've heard it first here. Wow! Paula, that is amazing.
Rewilding.
I stand with German sisters. We are women, we are strong. We're going nowhere. Fantastic. Women united. Courage, calling to courage everywhere. Patriarchy must go. We're going to win this. It's fantastic. And you're Mika, aren't you?
Yes,
great.
I am.
Julia. So important about this demo.
If we can both answer,
Yes.
if self-ID comes in Germany, it makes things much worse for Scotland, Wales, and ultimately England under the new Labour government.
Great, nice to see you.
Yeah.
Sheila Jeffries, why are you at this demo?
I'm here because what's happening in Germany with the new legislation is pretty much the worst that's happening in the world today, and women are being absolutely silenced, fined hugely if they speak biological truths, and children are allowed to be transgendered at 5 years old. It's the most shocking legislation in the world, so we need to be here to fight it.
And was it fun coming to the demo? Was it heartening seeing all these great women?
It is. I wish there'd been more, though. I wish there'd be more. But yes, it is lovely to see this.
Yeah, but we need more next time.
We absolutely need more.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Why did I come here? It's because to protest against the introduction of self-declaration of gender identity in Germany. It's one of the most extreme forms of gender identity law in the world. And it will allow for parents to trans their children when they're tiny, because it will give any man the right to just simply declare that he's a woman and go into all women-owned spaces. It's immediate. There's no gatekeeping process, and it's at any age.
Oh, it's terrible. And is it heartening? Is it nice coming here and seeing all these women testing? Have you enjoyed
it's great.
yourself?
Yeah, I have enjoyed it.
Out of 10,
good.
how many is it?
Oh, 9, because there could be more women.
Yes. Next time.
Yes,
It's
hopefully.
brilliant to see you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to be here.
Kate, why did you come here?
Well, I came because when they change the law anywhere in Europe, it affects every woman and every girl in Europe. Unfortunately, we tend to look at specifics like women in hospitals, women in prisons, women in sports, women in all sorts of facilities and circumstances. But what we tend to sometimes overlook are the legal ramifications. Right from any sort of statistical analysis of pay or illness or anything really, right the way through. Trans ideology takes a horse and coaches through everything that women have fought for over the last 100 years, and it's been actually less than 100 years, I think, since we've had the vote in the UK.
Yes.
To have legal and financial independence. I'm old enough, I remember the second wave women's liberation movement campaigning for that in the 60s and 70s. I remember my mother trying to get hire purchase to buy me a piano in 1973, and she needed her husband's signature in order to do that. Absolutely ridiculous. I've spoken to women who were unable to get a council residency, a tenancy on a home, and they couldn't do it because they were women. So we are inclined to forget and not realise how long it took us and how hard fought for each and every one of those, facilities and rights were. How difficult they were to attain and achieve. And this trans legislation is now abandoning them completely. We won't be able to, we can't identify who women are in law, and so we can't protect or defend any of our rights. One more thing before we go, we're not in the European Union anymore, but we do have an arrangement, I think it's a reciprocal arrangement with a lot of countries, so that anyone who has a gender recognition certificate in another country, say in Europe, can come here and, is fast-tracked to apply for one in this country and can get one relatively easily. It's a bureaucratic thing at the moment. Now, if this is now passed in Germany, and that means that all the EU countries will recognise anyone who has got a gender recognition certificate in Germany by virtue of self-identifying, and so that means that all those countries now have people who can have gender recognition certificates on a whim, and they can come here and be fast-tracked for a gender recognition certificate here.
That's outrageous. Okay, thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you.
First of all, we are going to hear from Kerry from the States.
Sisters, it's Carrie reporting on U.S. News again. I'll start with this one. On October 8th, International Lesbian Day, UN Free and Equal, the LGBTIQ+ campaign arm of the United Nations, posted on X that lesbians have many gender expressions, body types, and sex characteristics, suggesting that men can be lesbians. Lesbian Bill of Rights International responded in a post we published last week that says in no uncertain terms that all lesbians are women or girls, and that lesbian is a female sexual orientation that includes all men, however they may identify. The piece also asserts that for an agency of the United Nations to erase lesbians on International Lesbian Day makes your campaign unfit for purpose, and requests that the agency correct its falsehoods. Next, I'd like to mention an excellent Substack published by The Distance last week titled Reading the Scrimeti Briefs as History. The piece quotes extensively from the amicus brief WDI USA filed before the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of United States versus Scrimeti in support of a Tennessee law banning the medicalization of minors. This is the first time WDI USA has presented the radical feminist critique of gender identity before the Supreme Court directly, and we're very proud to have done so. The article concludes, instead of a sweeping victory for trans rights, the case could be a turning point in the long, hard road back to sanity. The activists demanded too much. May they rue the day they did. We couldn't agree more. Another article making waves this week is one published by the New York Times, which revealed that influential gender zealot Joanna Olson Kennedy withheld publication of the results of a 2-year federally funded study on the effects of puberty blockers on the mental health of minors, after results indicated that use of the drugs did not lead to mental health improvements, and she feared the results would be weaponized by opponents. The spin she attempted to put on what must have been a disheartening outcome for an ideologue such as herself was that the mental health of the kids participating in the study did not improve because most likely they were already doing well when the study began. However, this claim is contradicted by the original description of the participants given by Olson Kennedy and her team back in 2020. That initial psychological profile indicated that before receiving the drugs, around 1/4 of the group reported depression symptoms and significant anxiety, and 1/4 reported having thoughts of suicide. 8% reported a past suicide attempt. J.K. Rowling's take on Olson Kennedy's excuses was, as usual, quite damning. It reads, "We must not publish a study that says we're harming children because people who say we're harming children will use the study as evidence that we're harming children, which might make it difficult for us to continue harming children." Bless her. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to the University of Nevada, Reno women's volleyball team, who held their ground and did not play their scheduled game on Saturday against San Jose State University, the team that includes male player Blair Fleming, despite being thrown under the bus by university officials. UNR was the 5th and latest team to forfeit, and the first team to publicly share their rationale for doing so, citing solidarity with the prior teams that elected to forfeit, demanding that their right to safety and fair competition on the court be upheld, and refusing to participate in any match that advances injustice against female athletes. On the 23rd, the Wolfpack team doubled down on their decision to forfeit by announcing a "Hey NCAA and Mountain West, women's sports are for women only" rally and press conference to be held at the Reno Sparks Convention Center on game day, October 26th, which prompted Nevada Athletics to officially announce the match's cancellation due to not having enough players to compete. The event appears to have been a resounding success and drew a crowd estimated at over 400. Speakers at the rally included Riley Gaines, UNR volleyball team captain Sia Lili, along with 8 of her teammates. Live coverage of the event is available on X as well as on YouTube. And that's all for me today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody from Australia. So the case of Deeming and Pasuto has closed. The judgment is due before Christmas, unless it is delayed because the judge wants to get it done. Even though the pleaded defamation related to associations that Deeming was accused of having with Nazis and extremist groups, women's sex-based rights and transgender ideology played a large part in the trial. Deeming's lawyer, Sue Chrysanthu, put forward a case theory in her closing that Pasuto was, quote, annoyed at having to face media questions every time Deeming spoke about women's sex-based rights. So he used the Nazi associations as a pretext to get rid of her. But it was really about positioning the Liberal Party as trans-friendly Labour light. Pasuto's counsel, of course, rejected this. but it's invited the judge to pass comment on this in his judgment. This could be a win for visibility and the legitimacy of the issues facing women in this area. The judge made some interesting comments during trial, such as observing that Pasuto's counsel used the term so-called sex-based rights as though, quote, it was a pejorative, and noted that Deeming seemed concerned about the humanity and dignity of people who care about little girls in change rooms, and that was the judge's wording. So we'll see what he puts in his judgment. On the topic of Moira Deeming, she put a question to the Victorian government about whether the government records data at all on children in schools who have been declared mature minors by the school internally for the purposes of declaring themselves to be transgender. The government took it on notice and replied after checking with department, no, it does not. The federal government has opened a consultation into gender-affirming medical interventions being covered by Medicare, the government-funded healthcare. Government figures estimate that around 64,000 women and 64,000 men in 2023 alone would be candidates for these medical interventions, and the uptake would be around 37%, so 47,087 people in the first year. This is despite the 2016 census recording only 1,260 self-identified trans people in Australia. Submissions are currently open to the Medical Services Advisory Committee until the 14th of February 2025. The model proposed is a full depathologization model, which means that surgeries such as double mastectomies, voice feminization, and the creation of an artificial vaginal canal, including those constructed from segments of the intestines for young boys put on puberty blockers before they've been able to develop enough penile tissue to invert, would be at the patient's personal choice, per the language of the Australian Society of Plastic Surgeons in its application for new Medicare item numbers. The claim is also made that so-called gender incongruence is innate and does not therefore require any distress. The Greens Party has had a $15 million policy for government-funded gender interventions since 2021. Journalist Bernard Lane noted that the application was required to list all bodies of health professionals who may be affected, but did not list any body of mental health professionals, such as the Australian Psychological Society. The application also rejects the so-called binary of transitioning from male to female or vice versa, and instead argues for a broader category that includes non-binary and, quote, other types of gender incongruence, more in line with the WPATH standards of care, which include even eunuch identity. Please submit to the consultation, even if it is short. It is the Medical Services Advisory Committee, MSAC, Medicare consultation. The Queensland election was held last weekend and Labor lost. The new government will be formed by the Liberal National Party. They have made no policy commitments on women's sex-based rights other than some hints at limiting childhood interventions, but an opportunity is open for new lobbying efforts. The Brisbane Women's Speakers Corner went ahead on the weekend too. There was aggression from TRA counter-protesters, as there has been every single one, but the women stood their ground and the police have focused on the male leader of the TRA group as a source of trouble. The police have already undertaken mediation with the TRA organiser, and he gave an undertaking that the group would not attack women this time and would stand a certain distance back. They did not comply, but the police intervened and there was a scuffle. Reportedly, police wanted to apply to the courts for an application to bar the counter-protest, but were directed not to. At least the source of the trouble has been identified by police, though, and they're focusing in the right direction. And lastly, the Victorian government reportedly will introduce its anti-vilification bill this November across one of the 6 sitting days scheduled. Consultation closed a few weeks ago. The current draft includes both sex and gender identity as protected characteristics, and words the legitimate debate defence as speaking with a genuine political purpose. There is no specific guidance as yet on what a genuine political purpose would be and what a non-genuine one would be. but the required offence is to be judged by a reasonable member of the targeted group that is claiming to be offended. The maximum penalty proposed is 6 months in prison and/or a fine of almost $12,000. That's it from Australia.
For next week, with a whole load of women's groups with the Scottish Government, specifically in relation to the report on Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre and Rape Crisis Scotland, which are very in favour of allowing trans identifying men to work in centres and things. And I'm going along to that as a representative of WDI. So I'll report more on that after it's happened. And the other thing, just which isn't specific to do with WDI, but I'm very, very pleased about, and I'm suggested doing a thing on FQT about it anyway, is that we've put in a lesbian intervention to the court case that's happening next month at the Supreme Court in London on what the definition of the word woman means and whether or not it includes men with a gender recognition certificate, which is the current state of law in the UK. Well, I'm very happy with the submission that we've put in. I think that our barristers have done a really excellent job with it and made a fantastic case. So again, that's will be reported more on later. I think that's it, really.
Oh, well, there is a quite important news from Argentina concerning surrogacy. The Supreme Court has ruled in a surrogacy case in favor of the surrogate mother. The case was a gay couple who wanted to remove the surrogate mother from the birth certificate, and the court said that this is illegal because according to Argentinian law, mother is the one who gives birth. So it is a very good precedent for our cause, I guess. And regarding the same issue, there is right now in the justice a case for trafficking of women for reproductive exploitation about many women in Cordoba, which is a city in Argentina, and it has also the court has also repealed a provision of the Buenos Aires capital city that allowed the registration of children born through surrogacy. So I guess that the issue of surrogacy seems to have a good prospect in Argentina, at least much better than before with our previous government. So that is a good piece of news, I guess. That's it.